This page is the cover of DC UK Magazine, January 2001 issue, boasting a Dreamcast controller in the corner, naturally. It's reviewed Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 2, Dave Mirra BMX, Resident Evil 3, Mr. Driller and Worms at the top. The main feature is Skies of Arcadia, an exclusive preview of Sega's RPG, with over 20 pages of in-depth coverage, calling it one of the biggest games of next year. There's also a preview of Unreal Tournament, highlighting its deathmatch time again gameplay and screenshots of the brutal shooter. Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 2 review is flagged as well. Down the bottom it mentions Grandia 2, Outrigger, Cannon Spike and Vanishing Point are previewed. There are character shots from Skies of Arcadia front and center, with a glimpse of Unreal Tournament action below. It also teases a tipped section on MSR and Shenmue, promising a driving guide and walkthrough, plus something called Anti-Dreamcast, asking if shops are treating Sega's machine fairly, and Sega pillows, the crazy world of Japanese merchandise. The magazine's website is dailyradar.co.uk, and it's priced at £2.99. This page is an advert for Worms World Party, quite a bizarre one at that, featuring doctors in scrubs, struggling with a massive, fleshy worm like it's some kind of medical emergency. It's got the tagline, "This year the average person will unwittingly suffer from at least one type of worm infestation" above it, playing on the game's name obviously. Down below it mentions tougher, meaner worms and online gameplay, calling it an epidemic in the making, and a truly global problem. Platform logos for Dreamcast, PC/CD, Game Boy Color, and PlayStation are at the bottom, so it was on pretty much everything back then. Bit of a strange ad, but it certainly grabs your attention. This page is the contents page for the January 2001 issue, laying out what's inside this month's magazine. It's split into sections like Features, DC Preview, DC Express, DC Review, D-Tips and DC Interactive. Features kicks off with Skies of Arcadia, Sega's big RPG adventure, which is touted as exclusive. Then there's Unreal Tournament, Grandia 2, and You've Played the Game Now Eat the Hero, which sounds like a feature about games influencing lifestyle. Hidden Agenda looks like an investigative piece about shops dissuading Dreamcast purchases. D-Preview is packed with game previews, starting with Unreal Tournament again, then Grandia 2, and Skies of Arcadia again, perhaps going into more detail than the feature. There are also previews for Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 2, Dave Mirra BMX, Resident Evil 3, Nemesis, MSR, Metropolis Street Racer, and Shenmue. Sequels Frenzy in DC Express looks at upcoming sequels like Shenmue 2 and Crazy Taxi 2. Sega's future plans is also in there, pondering what Sega are up to next. DC Review has Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 2 getting the review treatment, and D-Tips focuses on Metropolis Street Racer and Shenmue again, probably with tips and tricks. DC Interactive has sections like Challenge, D-Emitil, and Q&A. Finally, Regulars lists the usual bits like Internet News, Subscriptions, Next Month, and Team Diary. On the cover, highlights Skies of Arcadia, Unreal Tournament, Hidden Agenda, and Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 2 as the main draws for this issue. Certainly a lot to get your teeth into for Dreamcast owners that month. Skies of Arcadia, a DC UK exclusive, is hyped as a highly anticipated RPG for the Dreamcast. The article previews a traditional RPG experience centered on airborne adventures and flying galleons. Players control Vice, a swashbuckling air pirate, on a quest spanning Arcadia's skies. The gameplay promises over 50 hours, featuring treasure hunting, journal entries with over 40 discoveries, and a rivalry with Domingo. The game includes romantic elements involving Vice, Aika, and Fina. Combat is turn-based, with enemies like sea creatures and black pirates. The storyline involves an evil threat. Screenshots showcase Vice, galleons, and locations, highlighting features like dissolving building walls and diverse battleships. The article emphasizes the game's grand scale and impressive graphics. This article previews Skies of Arcadia, showcasing its unique gameplay and world. Screenshots highlight the battle system with special moves, environmental effects, and exploration elements. The game features a dynamic ranking system where Vilatilice's title, influenced by player choices, affects NPC interactions and even merchant behavior. A chime alerts players to their reputation. The game is set in a distinctive Age of Discovery era, a world of air pirates and floating islands called Arcadia. The world design promises diverse locations, each with its own culture. The article also hints at intricate environmental puzzles, suggesting the game moves beyond standard RPG tropes. The next page showcases the Arcadia's most wanted feature, focusing on the characters you can recruit in Skies of Arcadia for your crew. We're introduced to Visades, the courageous leader, Aika, the energetic and quick-witted companion, and Fina, the mysterious magic user. Then there's Drachma, the grizzled veteran with a personal vendetta, Gilda, the flamboyant ladiesman and sharpshooter, and Beleza, the cunning Valuan admiral. Screenshots illustrate various aspects of the game, including Gilda in combat demonstrating his marksmanship, Fina casting healing magic, and a glimpse of airship battles where you're firing cannons at enemy galleons. There's also a shot of the winking kitten room, which they rightly point out, is a staple of any good RPG. The article emphasizes the sense of scale and freedom in Arcadia, promising players can explore anywhere and do practically anything. It touches upon the turn-based battle system and the ability to engage in battleship combat during mid-air raids, suggesting a spectacular and engaging experience. The game's ambition is highlighted, aiming for something more than just a dungeon crawl and positioning Skies of Arcadia as potentially the first Dreamcast masterpiece of 2001. Unreal Tournament for the Dreamcast, developed by Epic and converted by Sega, is a promising port of the acclaimed PC shooter. The preview highlights that it maintains the hallmarks of the original, boasting fluid textures, detailed visual effects, and a tactical gameplay experience that sets it apart from games like Quake 2i. The game features a variety of weapons, each with secondary firing modes, and classic game modes like Deathmatch, Domination, and Capture the Flag. The Dreamcast version supports up to 4 players, and offers keyboard and mouse control. Screenshots showcase the game's visuals and gameplay, including the effects and different game modes. Expected to release in March, the preview's tone is very positive, calling the game brilliant and a faithful conversion, with comments hinting at an exciting rivalry with Quake 2i. This page is all about Grandia 2, a sprawling RPG from GameArts that's coming to the Dreamcast. It's a preview of the Euro release, and it's looking rather good, sword and sorcery heaven as they put it. They are highlighting that the original Grandia on the Saturn was a graphical marvel back in '97, and this sequel is set to continue that tradition on the Dreamcast. The article mentions that many gamers considered the original to be the best RPG, not just on Saturn, but on any system, which is high praise indeed. The story revolves around protecting a singer named Elena from the forces of Valmar, a woken god, with you playing as Ryudo, her bodyguard. Gameplay-wise, it's turn-based combat, but they stress it's very rapid, with a time bar system determining the action order. Blocking and defending are just as important as attacking, and they've got stunning lighting effects and 3D backgrounds to make things visually impressive. Apparently you can expect plenty of locations to explore, from towns to ruins. The magazine seems to be very positive, suggesting it could be the best RPG on the Dreamcast, alongside titles like Phantasy Star Online and Eternal Arcadia for fans of the genre. They reckon it's got beautiful visuals and a solid plot, promising 70+ hours of gameplay, which is certainly a decent chunk of adventuring. The next page features a preview of Outrigger, a first-person deathmatch game for the Dreamcast developed by AM2, those legends behind Virtua Fighter and Shenmue. It's being published by Sega and slated for release in Q2 of 2001. The article positions it as a frantic, messy and glossy action game, very much in the vein of Quake 2i Arena. They mention it's for 1 to 4 players in local multiplayer. It boasts gorgeous locations and a wide array of weapons, from machine guns and grenades to more exotic fare. They're calling it brighter and brasher than most shoot-'em-ups, highlighting its visual style. The preview focuses on the weapon variety, showcasing screenshots and descriptions of the submachine gun, grenades, flamethrower, proximity mines, rocket launcher, and photon torpedo. They describe the weapons as extravagant and suitable for a futuristic anti-terrorist squad, which is the game's premise. The multiplayer mode is highlighted as offering both free-for-all and team battle options. They mention that the game can be played in either first or third-person perspective, though they found the first-person perspective more effective in their demo version. The controls are praised, particularly when using a keyboard and mouse, and they hope for mouse support in the final release. They also mention a single-player mode, but multiplayer is clearly the main focus. They conclude by saying it's aiming to mimic the joy of Quake, and they see it as a welcome addition to the Dreamcast's online gaming scene. The next page showcases Cannon Spike, a proper Psikyo blaster for the Dreamcast, published by Cap.com. They're calling it a psychotic new blaster, which sounds about right for these sorts of games. It's an isometric shooter harking back to the good old days of arcade action, very much in the style of Smash TV or Loaded. They mention wave after wave of enemies, devastating weaponry, and those hulking great bosses as key ingredients. Looking at the screenshots, it's definitely got that Sekiro vibe with massive explosions and loads of projectiles all over the screen. One caption mentions Sekiro bringing back their trademark 1945 laser blasts, so you know what to expect: pure, unadulterated shooting mayhem. Apparently, Cammy from Street Fighter and Charlie from Street Fighter Zero are in it, alongside B-Hood from Darkstalkers, Arthur from Ghosts and Goblins, and even Mega Man, so it's a bit of a Capcom All-Stars affair, which is a nice touch. They're raving about the pyrotechnics, saying there are new levels of pyrotechnic beauty in store, and it looks like they're not wrong, judging by the explosions. Release is slated for spring 2001. This page delivers a double dose of game previews, kicking off with Vanishing Point. It's touted as an arcade-style racer for the Dreamcast, promising a proper rush hour experience where dodging traffic is the main event, rather than just racing around empty tracks. They're boasting about the speed, claiming it rivals Le Mans 24 hours, and highlighting the slippery handling, saying it's been tweaked from earlier versions. It's coming from Acclaim, developed by Clockwork Games, and is slated for a February release, promising two-player action for those who fancy a bit of competitive driving. Next up is Guilty Gear X, a two-dimensional one-on-one fighter that's aiming for the top spot in the genre. They're raving about the graphics, calling them ultra-highs and stylish, and comparing the super moves to those in King of Fighters. Developed by Sammy and Arc System Works, it's Japanese in origin and was released in Japan in December, hinting at a possible UK release following soon after. The article mentions the respect and memories functions, and that the super moves are reminiscent of King of Fighters, which sounds promising for fighting game aficionados. They do mention a slightly slower pace but hope it can be tweaked before final release. Overall, it sounds like another strong contender in the Dreamcast's impressive fighting game library. This page showcases previews of two intriguing titles. First up is Mars Matrix, described as a brutally tough, old-school 2D shooter in the vein of classics like Layer Section and Do Donpachi. It's being developed by Takumi and published by Capcom, slated for a Q1 2001 release. They're highlighting its rock-hard gameplay and innovative weapon system, emphasizing how challenging it is, mentioning it being harder than Vinnie Jones after 10 pints and curry. Screenshots show intense bullet hell action and a boss battle, with captions explaining gameplay mechanics like bullet absorption and credit block collection. Then there's Disperia, a very different beast. It's billed as a conspiratorial action/role-playing game with a focus on mind control, developed and published by Warrantless. The game's storyline is set in a dark, sinister world where you play as Allura, who can delve into people's minds. Screenshots illustrate the game's atmosphere, with unsettling imagery and in-game text, suggesting a surreal and psychological experience. The preview hints at a complex narrative involving political turmoil and secret organizations, and mentions unique gameplay mechanics like Mind Dive and Sphere System for surveying environments. The release is noted as December in Japan, suggesting a potential future release in the UK. The article highlights the intriguing pitch and gameplay, despite the reviewer finding the English language copy a bit difficult to understand at this stage. The next page has previews for two games. First up is NBA 2K1, described as the best basketball game ever. It's said to be a massive improvement over the original, with smoother player models and more realistic graphics and animation. They reckon it's even sexier than a pair of trainers. It boasts improved graphics, animation, new moves, and online NBA gameplay with 2K1 Roules. You can play with up to 8 players online or 2 to 4 offline, and it's due out in spring 2001. Then there's Sonic Shuffle, a board game-style multiplayer game from Sega and Sonic Team. It's described as a game of life for the Dreamcast, a bit like Mario Party, but with a Sonic twist. You pick from Sonic, Knuckles, Amy, Tails, and even Super Sonic, and play with up to 4 players to collect rings and precious stones. They say it's quite addictive in multiplayer but warn that single player is a bit dull. The visuals are cartoon-like with cell shading, similar to Jet Set Radio, and you can play b-ball with chums, and even dodge falling weights from Robotnik. It's coming out in January, and is developed in-house at Sega Japan. The Dreamcast is getting a wave of new games, starting with Championship Surfer, a surfing title developed by surfing enthusiasts, promising realistic wave physics and various game modes. Following is The Grinch, a 3D adventure game where players embody the Grinch, aiming to sabotage Christmas. Next, Heroes of Might and Magic 2i, a classic PC turn-based strategy game with RPG elements, offers empire building and multiplayer. Finally, Ducati World, a motorbike racing game, aims for a balance between simulation and arcade gameplay with improved handling and a split-screen mode. The January 2001 DC Express section previews exciting Dreamcast games coming in the new year. Sequel Frenzy highlights Sega's push for the console, showcasing visual upgrades for Soul Reaver 2 and Crazy Taxi 2's move to New York. F355 Challenge 2 is touted as bringing the arcade experience home. A2 Hot to Handle list hypes upcoming titles, including 18-Wheeler, Alien Front Online and many more. Notably, Shenmue 2 is confirmed for 2001, promising a massive adventure across China and Hong Kong, aiming to surpass the original. Sega outlined ambitious plans for 2001, aiming to make Dreamcast a leading network gaming platform. They plan to release over 31 Dreamcast titles while exploring Dreamcast games for PC, PDAS, set-top boxes, and car navigation systems. Sega was also considering licensing games to other platforms and developing games for other consoles. A single-chip Dreamcast version was in development for integration into devices like palm-tops and mobile phones, promoting a multi-device content strategy. Sega envisioned the Dreamcast as an all-around entertainment machine, with web, e-commerce and gaming features. They aimed to achieve 10 million Dreamcast sales by March 2001. The article previews Woody Woodpecker Racing, a kart racer, and Samba de Arrivo, a music game with maracas. The DC UK game line was advertised for tips and cheats. DC Express reports on various Dreamcast news. System Shock 2's delay is mentioned. Virtua Striker 3 is previewed, promising improved animation and gameplay, aiming to be a serious contender. A leaked Quake port is described, running well despite bland colors. Rumors discuss Dreamcast sales figures against the PS2, and a SegaTech.com report suggests Square employees favored Dreamcast development. The top 10 games chart is also provided, including Metropolis Street Racer and Sonic Adventure 2. Over the Rainbow Six is previewed, focusing on tactical espionage and split-screen multiplayer. Finally, a preview of I Want My Mummy, a Tomb Raider-esque game based on the Mummy film, is provided, promising an atmospheric experience. This page has a DC Expresses section, leading with news that Capcom is releasing an enhanced version of Resident Evil Code Veronica on both Dreamcast and PlayStation 2 in Japan. There's a regular column by Dave 2000, who apparently likes to give the video game industry a spanking. Next up is an article titled, Could PlayStation's Undisputed Queen Really Be Dreamcast's Savior?, which seems to be discussing Tomb Raider and its relevance to the Dreamcast. It talks about piles of Dreamcasts in shops, and suggests Tomb Raider is seen as a perfect example of a game that appeals to a wider audience beyond hardcore gamers, mentioning Lara Croft and parental purchases. Then there's a feature titled, Go Sports Crazy, which is a review of the arcade game Sports Jam. It highlights that Sports Jam has 8 sports in one game, including soccer, basketball, tennis, baseball, ice hockey, golf, cycling, and American football. It's described as being split into stages with minigames, and is praised for its 2-player mode and crisp presentation. Finally, there's an advert for Netscape Online, and the Future Publishing logo is prominent on the right side of the page, along with small images at the bottom showcasing various magazine covers. This issue previews 4 upcoming games: Alexander, The Road to Persia, a Japanese-released military strategy game, puts players in Alexander the Great's shoes, employing strategic map positioning and troop management. Coldcept 2 blends board and card game elements, similar to Monopoly with Magic, The Gathering and Pokemon, featuring battles and property acquisition. Aero Dancing I, renamed Aerowings in the UK, is a flight sim with 4-player online dogfighting and realistic visuals. Finally, Airtricks, a skateboarding game from the Top Skater developers, focuses on stunts and half-pipe action, showcasing impressive graphics and combo scoring. All games have Japanese release dates in early 2001, with potential for UK releases. This page showcases the weird and wonderful world of Japanese Dreamcast merchandise, proving you can't escape consumer culture, especially when gaming is involved. It covers various categories, starting with household goods where you can grab Shenmue and Virtual on mugs, because who wouldn't want to drink their tea from a mug featuring Ryo Hazuki or a Temjin robot? Then there's food, with Hello Kitty Dreamcast sponge cakes, naturally. Accessories features Sonic the Hedgehog phone straps, Samba de Amigo straps, and even padded Sonic phone cases, ensuring your phone is as stylishly retro as possible. Toys highlights posable virtual-on robot figures with extra weapons, a serious collector's item that is. Clothing offers game-themed t-shirts like the Compounding Herbs shirt, probably a nod to Resident Evil. Finally, weapons, perhaps tongue-in-cheek, shows replica weapons for Resident Evil cosplay, and even poses the question about a 7-foot-long 3D slasher sword of Berserk replica. Madness! The page also includes photos of Resident Evil cosplayers, confirming the dedication of some fans. It rounds off with details of where to buy this stuff in the UK at the time. Another World, the Video Game Center, and Otaku for imported goodies if you wanted to splash the cash on some bonkers merchandise. This page is an advert from Gameplay showcasing various Dreamcast goodies. It's got Jet Set Radio and Metropolis Street Racer, both at £36.99 and £34.99 respectively, with Shenmue and Half-Life also at £34.99 each. They are pushing the Dreamcast console itself as the ultimate gaming console for £149.99, even throwing in Choo Choo Rocket for free. There's a selection of accessories too, like carry cases, keyboards, arcade sticks and VMUS, plus cables, and even a jump pack and steering wheel. On the right there's a long list of Dreamcast games with prices, everything from Aero Wings to Zombie Revenge, a proper bargain hunters list. They're also doing gift boxes and gift vouchers, so you could treat someone if you were feeling generous. In Retailers Strike Back, Hidden Agenda, Sophie Lomax investigates UK video game shops discouraging Dreamcast purchases. While some retailers like HMV and WH Smith claim impartiality, Lomax's investigation reveals a different story. Computer Exchange stands out, openly supporting the Dreamcast due to its perceived superior games. However, Lomax found several shops pushing PlayStation 2s, even taking deposits on unavailable consoles while dismissing the Dreamcast. Sales assistants disparaged the Dreamcast, promoting the PS2 as the better, more current choice, and downplaying the Dreamcast's game library. Dixon's Group and Electronics Boutique /Game did not respond to inquiries. The article concludes with a quote suggesting some retailers disregard Sony's marketing, implying a continued preference for the Dreamcast among certain stores and customers. Happy Shoppers presents customer experiences with Dreamcast purchases. The piece contrasts retailer attitudes. Some, like HMV and Dixon's, actively recommended the Dreamcast, even against the PS2, citing value and quality. Others, such as game exchange retailers, refused Dreamcast games due to Sega's perceived demise. Praise was given to smaller specialists and those offering impartial service. However, some customers encountered pushy sales tactics favoring PlayStation, while others found limited Dreamcast support in larger retailers. These contrasting experiences, from positive recommendations to dismissals, reflect the conflicting messages and challenges gamers faced when buying a Dreamcast at the time. The article concludes with a gamer's sentiment of being manipulated, reflecting the divide. Prisby. This article from DC Feature, Talking Shop, examines how retailers prioritized the PlayStation 2 over the Dreamcast. Retailers, especially large chains, focused on maximizing profit, favoring the PS2 due to its higher price and potential for software sales revenue. Sony also incentivized retailers to push their products. The article contrasts the strategies of independent and multiple retailers, with the latter driven by high turnover. Shop staff opinions were also included, with some, who were Dreamcast fans, recommending the console based on its games. The article also highlights a DC UK reader poll, revealing biased sales advice discouraging Dreamcast purchases. The piece concludes by suggesting staff training to improve consumer advice and promotes Dreamcast value packs. IDCreview presents its Dreamcast game reviews, emphasizing trust and featuring titles like Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 2, DC UK recommends, MTV Sports Skateboarding, Dave Mirra Freestyle BMX, Resident Evil 3, Nemesis, 4x4 Evolution, Record of Lodos War, Kiss Psycho Circus, Worms World Party, Cow the Kangaroo and Mr. Driller. Screenshots showcase gameplay. The review panel includes Lee Hart, Adrian Lawton, and Neil Maximus Randall, with their current game preferences. What's the score? Box explains their scoring system, out of 10, and the meaning behind the scores, utilizing DC UK recommends and DC UK essential badges for top-rated games. This page features a glowing review of Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 2, earning itself a DC UK recommends badge. They reckon it's one of those games that will keep you hooked well past Christmas. The review is seriously positive, calling it beautifully thought out and utterly essential. The screenshots highlight different aspects of the game. One points out the excellent animation and graphics. Another mentions the variety of levels being even better than the original. Two-player games are shown, including Graffiti, Tag, Trick Attack, Horse, and Free Skate. They also point out nice visual touches like the clothes rippling as your skater flies through the air. The review goes on about how realistically perplexing pro-level skateboarding is, but how the game captures it brilliantly. They praise the character customization, career mode, and the fact that it includes loads of real-world pro skaters. It mentions that THPS2 features 12 of the world's best pros, like Bob Burnquist, Elissa Steamer, Jeff Rowley, Eric Coston, Rodney Mullen, and Steve Caballero, noting some are making their first video game appearance. The details box confirms it's published by Activision, developed by Neversoft and Treyarch, priced at £39.99, released on December 15th, supports 1 or 2 players, and has 60 Hz and vibration features. It sounds like they're really impressed with this one, saying it's a must-have. The next page highlights the skatepark editor in Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 2, a feature they're clearly impressed by. They reckon it offers a massive amount of options for creating your own skateparks, letting you use loads of pre-made ramps, rails, and scenery bits to build from scratch, or tweak existing parks. The screenshots show the editor interface, showcasing how you can place elements and create gap jumps. They mention it's surprisingly easy to use, even though you can get quite complex if you want to get creative with gap placements. It sounds like a proper addition to the game, and another reason they're raving about it. The next page features a review of MTV Sports Skateboarding, with the headline, "Could this be Dreamcast's most unplayable game ever?" They've given it a rather dismal 3 out of 10. The review is pretty scathing, calling it a terrible Tony Hawk clone, plagued with glitches, awful controls and level design. They mention the graphics are poor and the sound is the only redeeming feature, listing bands like Rage Against the Machine, Naughty by Nature and Deftones on the soundtrack. Multiplayer is slated as being pointless because the game is so bad already. The reviewer, Richard Owen, clearly advises to avoid it at all costs. Alongside the review is a feature called Le Statisticien, focusing on Tony Hawk, likely Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 2 considering the previous page. This piece seems to detail the stat upgrading system in Tony Hawk's, explaining how maxed out stats are a worthwhile investment to improve your skater's abilities. It mentions that regardless of which skater you choose, improving stats is key, and you can do this in the stats shop, buying ability points to enhance performance. It highlights that while it costs cash, it makes a difference to your gameplay. Dave Mirra Freestyle BMX on the Dreamcast earns a 5/10, lauded for its trick variety but ultimately flawed. The game, a potentially direct port from the PlayStation, offers a vast trick system allowing for thousands of combinations and features a career mode, ProQuest, with diverse BMX areas. While the animation and sound effects are praised, the graphics are underwhelming, described as angular, and not maximizing the Dreamcast's capabilities. Gameplay is rough around the edges despite the innovative trick system, though multiplayer is engaging. The review acknowledges an initial enjoyment. It ultimately labels the game as sadly flawed, despite its impressive trick variety. Details confirm Acclaim as the publisher, Zaxxas as the developer, and a release price of £39.99. The review by Joao Sanchez mentions analog control, but recommends the D-P-A-D for precision. Tashua. This page features a review for Resident Evil 3, Nemesis on the Dreamcast, declaring it a fantastic survival horror adventure purely on gameplay terms, awarding it a solid 7 out of 10. The review emphasizes the game being a zombie fest set in Raccoon City, and while it's a PlayStation port, it's noted to have character models that are high as akin to Code Veronica. Although the backgrounds remain pre-rendered 2D, the sound and spooky atmosphere are praised for enhancing tension. And the gameplay involves classic Resident Evil elements, like key hunting and puzzle solving, now with gunpowder crafting for ammo. The live-action scenes requiring quick decisions are highlighted as adding to the experience, as is the inclusion of the quick-turn move from Dino Crisis. For the Dreamcast version, new features are mentioned, such as the Mercenaries mode being unlocked from the start, previously needing to be earned, and a health meter similar to Code Veronica. Jill Valentine also gets a wardrobe boost, with 8 costumes to choose from. The Mercenaries mode itself is detailed as a minigame testing battle skills, where picking characters with less weaponry yields greater rewards. The screenshots showcase in-game action and menus, and overall, the game is deemed a worthy addition for any Resident Evil fans collection. The review is by Adrian Lawton and dates from January 2001. The next page presents a couple of game reviews. First up is 4x4 Evolution, an off-road racer from Take-Two. It's priced at £39.99, supporting up to 4 players offline and featuring online play too. The review isn't glowing, awarding it a measly 4 out of 10. They reckon it's a bit of a letdown, especially for patrol heads who might be expecting something special after games like MSR and Le Mans. They mention the online mode isn't great either, and suggest that if you're after off-road racing on the Dreamcast, Four-Wheel Thunder is a better bet. Screenshots show off the racing action with checkpoint markers and some vehicle damage. Just Davin. Then there's a look at Record of Lodos War, The Advent of Cardis, a single-player action, RPG, from Virgin Interactive, also at £39.99. This one fares much better with a 7 out of 10 score. Adrian Lawton reckons it's a bit of a hidden gem. While graphically it's not amazing, it's described as nicely done and atmospheric, with good sound. Gameplay is classic hack-and-slash-RPG action with a fantasy storyline. They highlight the inventory system and spellcasting elements. Screenshots show typical isometric RPG gameplay, spell selection menus, and inventory screens. It's pitched as a decent choice for fans of the genre, especially for those winter nights. Kiss Psycho Circus, The Nightmare Child, a first-person shooter, earns a 6/10. Based on the comic, it features bizarre enemies and environments representing elements. The graphics are decent, and gameplay is fast-paced but ultimately mediocre, lacking depth and online multiplayer. The review criticizes its failure to match the PC version and feels it could have been better. Worms World Party, the Dreamcast debut, receives an 8/10. This turn-based strategy game offers multiplayer fun, including online play. It features a training mode, missions, and the Wormopedia. Graphically cute and colorful, it delivers wacky sound effects and all the outrageous weaponry fans expect. The review emphasizes its addictive multiplayer and overall fun. This page presents a double-page spread of Dreamcast game reviews. On the left we have a review for Cow the Kangaroo, which they are calling Sega's Lawrence of Arabia, Bangayo, and Lethal Weapon IV, all rolled into one, a rather grand statement. The details box tells us it's published by Titus, developed by X-Ray, priced at £39.99, and is a single-player game supporting 60 Hz and vibration. The review itself notes it's a 3D platformer, drawing comparisons to Crash Bandicoot, Spyro, and Sonic Adventure, mentioning collectibles and boxing glove attacks. They feel it's aiming squarely at younger gamers, and while competent enough it's ultimately quite generic and scores a 6 out of 10. On the right side we have Mr. Azu, Driller, hailed as the miniature miner game ready to blast through some European rock. The details box states Virgin are the publisher, Namco the developer, released in December, single player, and supporting 60 Hz and vibration. The review positions it as Namco's Dreamcast contribution, referencing Soul Calibur. They describe it as a simple but addictive puzzle game in the vein of Boulder Dash, Mr. Do, and Dig Dug, focusing on drilling through colored blocks whilst managing your air supply. They praise its compelling gameplay and retro feel, awarding it a solid 8 out of 10, calling it utter brilliance. Declistings reviews a variety of Dreamcast titles. Racing games like Four-Wheel Thunder and Aerowings 2 receive scores of 8/10. Shooters such as Armada and Gigawing varied in quality, while Bangayo and Expendable disappointed. Puzzle games like Bust-A-Move 4 and Choo Choo Rocket were highly praised, as was Dead or Alive 2 9/10. Other notable titles include Crazy Taxi, Chicken Run, Fur Fighters 9/10, Half-Life 9/10, and Jet Set Radio 9/10. Racing sims like Formworld Grand Prix and Ferrari 355 Challenge were reviewed with mixed results. The reviews highlighted the diverse game selection, ranging from fighting games to sports sims, and showcasing the Dreamcast's strengths and weaknesses. The Declistings review continues, showcasing the Dreamcast's diverse library. Racing fans rejoice, as Rally 2 earns a perfect score. Other top performers include Trick Style, Tony Hawk Skateboarding, and Virtua Tennis, all achieving 9/10. Fighting games are well represented with Techromancer, 9/10, and various Street Fighter titles receiving respectable scores. However, not all games shine. Wafer Dream Soccer and Wafer Striker receive low marks, while Toy Commander and Sword of the Berserk disappoint. Time Stalkers strangely get to 12/10. The reviews highlight the Dreamcast's strengths in arcade-style sports and fighting games, while also revealing some significant misses. This page showcases reader reviews for Dreamcast games. James Goldspink reckons Worms Armageddon is top-notch, giving it a perfect 10 out of 10, praising the multiplayer and replayability. Mark Woodward reviewed Hidden and Dangerous, awarding it a 9 out of 10, highlighting its World War II setting and SAS gameplay. Dan Wilkin takes a look at Virtua Cop 2 Import, also scoring it a 9, and mentions its arcade action and improved graphics over House of the Dead 2. Yukian Feng reviews Street Fighter Alpha 3, giving it 8 out of 10, noting the refined gameplay but being less keen on the changed music and tough high-score challenges. There are also brief mentions of Metropolis Street Racer and Shenmue, and an advert for best price Dreamcast games and hardware from Slammer, plus a sponsor mention for gameplay. The next page is a driver's guide for Metropolis Street Racer. It's full of tips to help players get past Chapter 2, focusing on power sliding, inertia drifting and racking up kudos points. The guide talks about using kudos points to unlock new stages and chapters, and mentions special races where you can win extra goodies. There's advice on weather conditions, noting how rain affects handling, and suggesting AWD or 4WD cars in wet conditions. It emphasizes learning the tracks and cars, and gives specific driving advice on accelerating out of corners and steering with analog controls for finer adjustments. Needle threading is mentioned as a skill to master, and there are screenshots showing different gameplay scenarios and in-game tech snippets from Metropolis Street Racer. This page is a continuation of the Metropolis Street Racer Driver's Guide, focusing on key driving techniques. It covers braking, recommending careful use of the analog trigger, and advising against harsh braking. It also highlights the importance of test driving cars to understand their unique handling characteristics. The guide suggests that the in-car view is not only the most exhilarating, but also the most effective for judging corners and overtaking. For overtaking, it advises outbraking opponents and emphasizes precise corner entry. The page then delves into power sliding and inertia drifting, explaining these techniques with helpful diagrams to help players master cornering at speed and gain those all-important kudos points. Finally, it discusses drive types, specifically front-wheel drive cars, noting they're easier to handle, especially for beginners and in wet weather, making them a good starting point for mastering Metropolis Street Racer. This page of DX Tips carries on the Metropolis Street Racer driving guide, this time diving into the various challenge types you'll encounter. It runs through modes like Challenge, Overtake Challenge, Average Split Speed Challenge, Lap Challenge, and tense one-on-one races. Then it gets into the championship races, which are the longer events with changeable weather, and street racing hot laps, which are about beating target times, and your ghost car. Finally, there's standard street races against multiple opponents. The guide also expands on car types, moving on to rear-wheel drive cars like the Toyota Misses, Fairlady Z, and Jensen SV8, highlighting their power but need for careful handling, especially when cornering to avoid spinning out. Then it covers four-wheel drive cars, pointing out their stability, especially in wet conditions, making models like the Nissan Skyline and Audi 3 good choices. It reminds you of front-wheel drive cars from the previous page like the Peugeot 306 GTI and Mitsubishi FTO, reiterating their ease of use. There are further tips for specific challenges, such as using landmarks to learn the tracks, and in general, it's all about mastering control and understanding your car to really succeed in Metropolis Street Racer. This walkthrough details the beginning of Shenmue, guiding players through Ryo Hazuki's quest for revenge. It starts with finding the cassette player and tapes, and receiving daily pocket money from Inasan. The guide covers early exploration, including finding clues, interacting with key characters like Fuxan at the dojo, and feeding a kitten. The walkthrough then leads players to Dobuita, Yokosuka's town center, where they meet Nozomi, Tomo-san, and Yamagishi-san. It suggests visiting the Game U arcade, talking to the owner and barber, and offers tips on pool betting. Players will encounter quick-time events, including fights near the motorbike shop and at Heartbeats Bar. The guide concludes by advising players to talk to specific townspeople and adhere to the 11 p.m. curfew. Paydale. This walkthrough details the next phase of the Shenmue adventure, beginning after Dobuita. Ryo must gather information from various sources, starting with a QTE to save a girl and progressing through conversations, including bribing a man with a drink. He'll encounter cryptic figures, and must solve a symbol puzzle and CCTV camera challenge. Game U Arcade offers clues and a confrontation with Charlie at the tattoo parlor. Guarantee Marder. The next day involves sparring, receiving a Chinese letter, and more battles. Ryo gets the letter translated, calls a number using code words, and gets an address. The journey continues at the docks, navigating workers and a security guard. After 7 p.m., Ryo helps a homeless man and then engages in a QTE fight. Finally, Ryo takes a bus to the harbor, signaling the end of Disc 1. This walkthrough covers Ryo's adventures following the docks sequence. He must sneak through a security area, dodging guards, and reacting quickly to a ringing phone to reach Warehouse 8 and meet Master Chen. Afterward, Ryo obtains a keepsake, buys a light bulb, and fights Gizhang. He then uncovers a secret room in the dojo, revealing clues. Next, Ryo seeks guidance from the antique shop owner's granddaughter and shows Fukusan the keepsake. He then purchases a ticket to Hong Kong, confronts Jimmy, and fights Chai. Finally, Ryo picks up his ticket, encounters more trouble, and pursues a chase, ending Disc 2 with a preview of Disc 3. Prove your Dreamcast gaming prowess in the DC Interactive Challenge to win prizes. Participate in challenges across various titles. In Metropolis Street Racer, earn kudos points. Tony Hawk Skateboarding challenges you to rack up tricks. Dead or Alive 2 tests your speed in time attack and your endurance in survival mode. Sega Bass Fishing requires you to catch the biggest bass. Soul Calibur focuses on survival mode wins. Crazy Taxi features Crazy Jump, Crazy Jam, and Crazy Flag challenges. Ferrari 355 Challenge has a Suzuka short race. Finally, Virtua Tennis challenges players to reach the third stage of training. High scores are listed, featuring top players. Prizes include a Mad Catz joypad or a DC UK t-shirt. Submit your scores via email or post to the provided address. The Dmail section features reader feedback on the Dreamcast. One highlights the superior online experience compared to the PS2, specifically mentioning Choo Choo Rocket and Quake 2 e-Arena. Another lauds Samba de Amigo, with a fan importing the game and forming a samba duo. Readers lament the lack of Dreamcast support, despite its innovative features and strong game library, citing titles like Shenmue and Jet Set Radio. One defends the Dreamcast modem's speed, and another argues for more console competition. Humorously, one email suggests a link between Mario and Thunderbirds. Don't believe the hype, praises the Dreamcast's originality over PS2 games. Finally, a reader seeks help with underwater football in Echo the Dolphin. Screenshots of Mario, Koopa, and Jet Set Radio are included, with a game giveaway from Simply Games mentioned. DAC UK, contact information is provided. D Cook's Q&A addresses Dreamcast gaming questions. Dan asks about the Dream Eye camera, due early next year for £50 to £100. M. Morris inquires about broadband, including a £299 Dreamcast/DVD deal, check local shops, and the Dreamcast mouse with Quake 3 Arena, December 8th. Broadband is coming via Adzail, but limited by infrastructure. Cassie wonders about the internet's longevity. Fan sites will likely persist even after 2084. The Dream Eye captures still images and short animations. Bede Brooks gets advice on racing wheels. They work best when games are designed for them, recommending the Thrustmaster Ferrari wheel for specific races. Canthan confirms Quake 3 Arena supports 4-player split screen. Nick learns Metropolis Street Racer lacks a replay feature, but has ghost data. Podge's Star Trek Voyager, Elite Force question is answered with no current plans. Screenshots showcase Quake 3 Arena, Metropolis Street Racer, and Crazy Taxi. An ad for Games Master magazine promotes its PS2 issue, Forisa. Dice Interactive Internet News reports on Dreamcast-related developments. Sega plans to integrate online shopping with real-life assistance, 3D product viewing, and video phone features. Broadband is coming to the US for under $60, with no UK release date yet. Downloading movies is problematic due to hardware limitations, but dreamworld.vigamin.com offers Sega-related videos. A Japanese company is developing a wireless internet device. Sega Europe will offer cheap phone calls using the Dreamcast microphone, starting with Dream Dorobo. Online gaming in Japan includes Aero Dancing Eye, Flight Competition, and Catch and Flight, with a fishing game, Joshugaturi. Recommended websites include DC UK, Mr. Showbiz, Fat Babies, Lisa Snowed on Site, and Am I Hot or Not? This page features various advertisements related to gaming. Several online retailers like Mad Forest Games and Sega Dreamcast are promoting Dreamcast and retro games. Computer and Games Exchange, a London shop, offers buying, selling and trading of consoles and games. CA Games advertises Dreamcast needs, and SFX Magazine promotes its X-Files themed issue. UK Dreamcast Magazine itself is advertising subscriptions. Other ads highlight new game titles, including Dreamcast classics and games for other platforms, like PS2 and PC. Cheats Unlimited is advertising its website for cheats and walkthroughs, offering a vast library of game tips. This page is an advert for a DC UK magazine subscription, pushing a special offer to get 6 issues for just £12, working out at only £2 an issue, which is a proper bargain. They're even chucking in a free CD case while stocks last, of course, which they reckon is worth a tenner. It's all risk-free with a money-back guarantee if you're not happy, and they deliver it straight to your door. Free delivery if you're in the UK, that is. The advert explains why you should subscribe, like keeping your money in your pocket longer and never missing an issue. It also details how to subscribe, offering options to call them, send off a form, or go online. Looking at the magazine cover, they've got Tomb Raider Chronicles, Quake 2 iArena, and Shenmue featured, all cracking games. There's a form to fill out to subscribe with your details and payment method, offering direct debit, check, or card for UK readers, and options for Europe, America, and the rest of the world if you're reading from further afield. The next page is previewing the next issue, issue 19 of the magazine, which is going on sale January 18th. It's teasing a big feature called Sonic Team Talk, where DC UK Magazine has gone all the way to Japan to chat with the folks behind Sonic, including Yuji Naka himself, and they'll be talking about what's next for Sonic Team, likely after Sonic Adventure, and perhaps even hinting at Phantasy Star Online. There's also mention of more international news than any other magazine, and tips for Quake 2 iArena, which was mentioned on the cover of the previous issue as well. To go with the Sonic theme, there's a big close-up of Sonic's face. Down at the bottom they've got screenshots from Grandia 2 and Daytona USA Online, and just Daytona USA, presumably teasing reviews or previews in the next issue. This DC UK Magazine issue offers a behind-the-scenes look at the team's hectic schedule, from November 16th to 24th, which included managing page counts, meeting deadlines, and playing Dreamcast games like Samba de Amigo and Wafer Dream Soccer. The team also attended the Manchester Derby. Editor Keith then details the demanding role of an editor, emphasizing the hard work and importance of industry relationships and journalistic integrity. Finally, a UKGames.com and Special Reserve discount stores advertisement promotes savings on Dreamcast games like Shenmue and MSR, a Dreamcast Top 100 list, and freebies for joining Special Reserve.